dig out from underneath the vehicle if it's high planed, high centered up on some snow. All those things are just important pieces to the puzzle. And, understanding also if you've got a vehicle, and this one was a tough one because it was a sport utility front wheel drive that didn't have a hitch on the back. And so, and my pickup is at the shop getting some warranty work done. So I was trying to scavenge things that I had in my garage, and I had a log chain that was pretty good length that my neighbor had given me when he moved. Jeff, if you happen to watch the podcast, listen to the podcast, thanks for that chain. I finally used it. I'm moving to Phoenix. I don't need this anymore. And so trying to find something to hook to and dig to when the back end of the car is in the snow enough that you can't just easily get underneath there. And so I think it's important for people to understand, while it's good weather, look underneath your vehicle. This maybe seems odd, but whoever's driving that vehicle, make sure they know where the potential hook points are if somebody had to hook up to you with a strap or something to pull you out. Where are some good, or if you're at the oil change place and they got the car up in the air and you're looking at it, say, hey, could you guys show me where would be a good place to hook to if I ever got in trouble? Mm-hmm. And in this case, like I said, the vehicle was nose down, and so you had to pull from the back just for what I was trying to do. And a lot of vehicles now, you have the little windows you can remove on the bumper, and you can screw in a hitch into the end of the frame rail or the bumper reinforcement that gives you a really strong pull point. I think even those are rated at certain levels. They're not rated to lift the car up in the air.
Sure.
But they're very good for and designed for pulling a car up out of the ditch. And that's from the front. But in this case, we weren't going to be pulling it from the front on a ice-covered road with the vehicle I was pulling with having limited traction. I kind of had to have it come out the way it went in. And so I just think it's important for people to realize. And then, you hear it from the news stations all the time, but just having that survival stuff in the car, making sure that you understand that your tailpipe is clear. There goes back to that shovel, so your exhaust is getting away from the vehicle. Understanding the importance of having your battery cell phone charger with you so you can get a hold of people and let them know, or in this day and age, be located. You hear more and more of that, where people being located with Find My iPhone. I just saw a story recently on the news. I didn't open it up, but where somebody had went off a 200-foot cliff and somehow survived, but they found the person by using Find My iPhone way off the road where nobody could even see them. Mm-hmm. And that's how they found them. And so having that cell phone and having that battery charged up, having a charger in the vehicle that works with that vehicle and that phone. So if you do need to charge it with your vehicle running, don't take off out on the road without a full tank of gas or close to it if you can afford it. So if you do get stuck, you got that Petro to keep you going and keep the heater running. Just so many things that I just think that I know I'm going to do a better job of teaching my daughter. She was a passenger in this case, but I've got to do a better job. It's my youngest, and she hasn't had as much interaction with the vehicle stuff as my two oldest.
Well, and that's it. You forget that. I mean,
Yeah.
you've taught your kids one thing, and this happens at my house, happened to me for sure growing up. You think that that's just ingrained in your family, and you forget that, we didn't specifically talk about it with everyone.
Well, for me, especially, it's almost embarrassing being a car family. I mean, we've been around this stuff our whole life, and you just expect people to absorb it. But if you don't spend that time talking about those things. So last night, I had a little class with 5 kids out in the middle of the road at midnight. Mm-hmm. Just telling them about some of the things that, hey, here's what I'm doing. Just understand this. I told them all, hey, get a shovel in your vehicle. I had just put one in my daughter's vehicle, one of them little aluminum emergency shovels. They snap together. Doesn't take up a lot of room, but boy, you could do some good with that if you needed it. And just all those different things that it's life imperative. And so because we had hundreds of vehicles stranded on our interstates as we went across our state.
Absolutely.
And you saw some of the pictures of, make national media of cars buried, and you see these drifts that when they're running a snowplow or a snowblower through it that are taller than the equipment.
Right.
You're talking about some pretty scary stuff.
And we talked about, where did we talk about? I heard the tip that said if you're stranded and you've been talking to people for help and you're on your phone and the battery's going, change your voicemail.
Yeah.
Change your outgoing voicemail.
Somebody said that to me, and then I was going through some of the comments, and they said this is a hoax. I'm like, how can that be a hoax?
Right.
If you set your voicemail is set system wide. It's not. It's in your phone, but it's also connected to your account.
Right.
That's the voicemail they're going to get if they try to call you.
Yeah. So set it and say, hey, it's Monday, 10 p.m. We're stranded here. Because what's going to happen is if you've been talking to someone for help and your phone dies, they're going to call you, or people are going to call you. So, and again, it's not something you have to do first. That's not that.
Yeah.
That's a last resort
We're
type
in the ditch,
of.
change the voicemail.
Right. Yeah, and you don't want to leave it there. I mean, that's not something that you really have to think about, other than keep it in your head. Where if you are stranded and you're trying to get help, it's just one last thing to do before your phone dies. But and we had a situation close to us where some kids were stranded, and they had sent a note to their friends saying, "Here's where we are," and they were talking to them on the phone, and they couldn't figure out how to find them, and they couldn't figure out where they were.
Well, yeah, because a lot of these kids, I said, "Where are you at?" And they're like, "Well, we turned off of the first gravel from here and went this way," and I'm like, "Okay." And there's 3 different roads I had in my mind that they could have been on, and so when my daughter had called me, I'd kept track of where she was at, and so I was able to drive right to it. But a lot of they can't describe without electronics where they're at.
Well, and in this case,
right?
they had friends coming to get them. And so they sent the pin, they sent their location to their friends. Well, they were out in the country. They were trying to get to a place where they were going through other places, back roads and stuff. They got stranded. Their friends could see them on the map, but couldn't figure out how to get there because of the snow and because of the roads. The roads weren't all set on, they would go past and say, well, we just went past you to the south. We didn't see you. Well, we don't know how to get to where you were. Someone who was plowing stopped to check on the friends and said, is everything okay? They said, yeah, we're fine, but we can't get to our friends. So
was this in the middle of the worst when it was?
Yes, it was
15 degrees below zero and the wind
Friday
chill
night.
was 40, 50 below zero?
Exactly.
This is like, we're talking in minutes, you can have serious problems.
And these were kids who got out of the car to try and walk to the road to flag down their friends, so they were cold and wet, and they were running out of gas. I mean, it was really, they were going to just take a little, it was a whole thing where the guy driving the plow said, I didn't know if their car was running or what, if they had blocked tailpipes and maybe they were falling asleep because of carbon. So he just actually got on the phone with them and said, send me the PIN. And then he went and got them, and he took them right to the ER in Worthington, Minnesota. Just dropped them off at the ER and said, go in, because they were frozen, and it was really a touch-and-go situation. And it was just that fast because they had talked to their friends. Their friends were coming to get them, and I think they were young enough that they were kind of like embarrassed, so they weren't going to call, they weren't calling for help because their friends were on the way. And it was a life-and-death situation that was solved by chance because they were not aware of what to do. They didn't know how to get out of that situation. They had their phones. They were talking to someone, but they weren't able to get the job done. So it was a tough situation. It worked out great, but as we saw across the nation, it didn't work out that way for everyone. So,
yeah, no, there's definitely some serious situations that were unfolding and people that had some serious challenges and family emergencies. So, yeah, well, we kind of got off on a little bit of a serious subject there, but I just think it's important enough. And like I said, I had a reminder last night when the weather was good on how quickly people that aren't thinking about the problems can get in trouble.
And when the kids is a good one. Talk to your kids again about it.
Yep.
That's a good
No,
one.
I know this whole group, it'll be a wake-up call for them and an opportunity to talk about something. Because I heard one say, I'm putting a shovel in my vehicle. I'm getting, they were talking about what they needed to do. I hope they follow through with it.
866-594-4150. We're going to take a break. When we come back, we want to hear from you on the Under the Hood Show.
Be sure to visit our website for news, contests, and previous shows at underthehoodshow.com. Welcome back, everybody. It's time to get back under the hood with the Motor Medics.
866-594-4150. That's the number to reach us here at the Under the Hood Show. Let's talk to Tim. Tim, you're on the Under the Hood Show. What can we do for you?
Morning, fellas. I'm calling from Rapid City, South Dakota.
All right.
I've got a 2005 Buick Cross. Got the six-cylinder in it. I can't remember the placement, but it's got that EM six-cylinder in it. And I've got a check engine light that's been on for, I don't know, a year and a half or so. But what it is giving me the P code of the catalytic converter. It's basically telling me that the catalytic converter is not working correctly.
Cat efficiency
And
code.
I do know it. Right. And so I guess my question is, it seems to run all right. I mean, how long can I run it like this? And also, I did notice that the three coils that I can see, one of them looks like it's been replaced. I'm kind of wondering if maybe one of them went out and maybe that's why it messed up the catalytic converter. But anyway, so I'm wondering if it still runs all right. Am I screwing the car up? How long can I run it this way? Or can I just get rid of the catalytic converter altogether?
All right. Well, let's see if we can help you out here, Tim. And how many miles are on this Buick LaCrosse?
102,000.
All right, so relatively low mileage for the age of the car at 102,000 for sure.
Yeah, it's a honey. It's all decked out. It's got the leather, surround sound. It's a nice car, actually. But it's a work car. I paid a couple $1,000 for it. It's all so. I mean, it's a nice car, but I want to keep it running. It works good for me.
All right. Well, a couple things here. There are tune-up issues that can mimic eventually a catalytic converter efficiency code. I mean, if you get something that's misfiring bad enough, and you can have other codes, but they can be underlying, hidden by that catalytic converter code. And so the one thing you want to make sure of is that the catalytic converter is not plugged. I mean, that's the car wouldn't run very well if it was plugged, but making sure that you have good cat flow and exhaust flow. And you can do that with just a down home, hey, how much air does it feel like coming out of the tailpipe compared to another one that's similar, and see if it seems like it's different or not. I mean, I'm talking very rudimentary way of just checking that. More scientific would be to pull an oxygen sensor out and put a pressure gauge on it. They can also check temperatures across the front of the cat to the back of the cat and see what the temperature change are to see what's actually happening inside of there, and find out if the cat itself is getting up to the temperatures that it should, if it's doing the work that it should. And then at that point, you kind of look back and say, all right, this thing's not plugged, and it still seems to be getting the temperatures built up inside of it that it should. The catalyst itself could have broke loose and isn't able to help it create the correct effect to get the readings on the oxygen sensors that are downstream from the converter. There's a comparison going on all the time to figure out what percentage of efficiency that converter has compared to how it was programmed when it was new. And they give you a range of efficiency, and once it falls out of that range, that's when you get that code. And that code can come on if the converter is truly bad, and that code can also come on if there's a problem with that circuit. That code can also come on if there's, like I said, another issue. You mentioned the coils. It could lead to a misfire situation, but there again, you would have other codes in there most likely if you got it to a diagnostic person that could look at all the data in the system. And that's probably what you're going to need to do to decide that, okay, is there something else going on with this car that's causing it to put that code on, or is it truly a converter that's just failed? And if that is the case, you could make the decision to wait for a while if the car is running good. You can't take it off. It's just too, in my opinion, on that kind of car, it's just too wired into the system, and there's federal emissions laws are getting cracked down harder and harder. I mean, our area of the country, not as much as others, but you don't have to go far across the border into Colorado or Minnesota, and you'll find out that eventually you can't register your vehicle unless you fix that stuff. And so there is different takes on all that, but that is just the reality of where it's at in a lot of areas. And for our listeners that are on the far coast, that's been a commonplace for a long time. But as far as the car running good and working good, you could probably run it a while like that. But I want to find out to make sure there's not something else buried in that codes that you're just not seeing because you've assumed that that's what's causing this check engine light to be on. I do like the fact that it's running okay, though. Your fuel economy seems about the same.
Yeah, it seems to run about 25, 26. And I've heard that if the catalytic converter goes bad, it'll eventually plug and then you won't have power. I guess I don't notice that. And I bought the car, I don't know, 18 months ago. I bet I've put 15,000 miles on it since. And it's still running. I mean, I guess I figured it would have been plugged up by now, maybe.
Well, that's the thing. It's a misconception by a lot of people that the only way they fail is that they plug up. That's not always the case. Like I said, the catalyst inside can break out of the center of it and get blown right out of the exhaust, and you basically have a free flow system, and it's just not doing the work that it needs to do without that packet of rhodium or platinum and palladium mixed in there at high temperatures that helps burn off those hydrocarbons. And so then the sensor's like, yep, can't do this anymore. Something's not working. Turn the light on. I don't like this. But it could, like I said, it could still be flowing good and still running okay. If they plug and that's their failure, you're going to know that because the car's not going to run very good, and you have a very, very good chance of damaging a cylinder in the engine if you don't address that right away. So you got to make sure. You do need to check that. You need to have somebody just check that a little bit closer, and then you can decide from there. I'm a little bit more open about things. I think if you chose, you could run it for a while as long as you know it's not clogged. You just got to be careful.
Do you feel freer giving that advice without Russ here?
He would correct me pretty quick because it is the against most mechanics.
Right, and you're saying you do need to get it checked, but not this morning.
No.
Okay.
As long as it's running okay, I would be. But it's something you got to get checked out. You can't ignore it.
Tim, thanks very much for the call. Good luck. We're going to take a break. When we come back, we're going to talk to Bill in Idaho. You're up next, Bill. 866-594-4150. You're listening to the Under the Hood Show.
Going under the hood.
866-594-4150. That's the number to reach us here at the Under the Hood Show. Normally, during the show, we give away a hoodie thanks to Universal Technical Institute. We are not going to do that this week because we've got some other people.
We're going to talk about UTI, and then we'll just have a hoodie conversation.
Mm-hmm.
Little hoodie break.
I wore my hoodie while I was doing some snow removal over the week. And
they're great for that.
Yeah, because I put on the snowsuit and then the hoodie, so then the jacket so I could bring the hood up, and I had on a new face mask, and I tried to put on goggles because it was so cold out there.
It was terrible.
that my eyes were frozen. Yeah. I mean, around my eyes, and I thought, well, I have goggles. I should just go put those on. And they were in the garage, and when I picked them up and went to put them on my head, they shattered.
They're old.
So
you had those goggles a while.
So I didn't have. It was too cold to put on the goggles to protect me from the cold.
I have a set of goggles that I have hanging right from the turnstile for my auger on my snowblower, and they go right on when it's cold out.
Yeah,
I put them goggles on, and it helps a ton to get that fine misty snow blowing around in the cold. That works really good.
I went out to take a picture of the 6-foot drift across the front of my house. And in the time I went out to take the picture and came back in, I was like, "Oh, this is not good. This is concerning." It was that cold out with the wind, and oh man. So the hoodie keeps you warm.
You can buy one.
Yeah,
because layering is the best thing to do, and that
exactly
the
right.
hoodie is a crucial layer.
And if you go to Universal Technical Institute, you can pick a warm climate like the one down by my son. And then people will send you pictures of the snow while you're just sitting there in short sleeves and shorts.
Or else they send the pictures back saying, look where I'm at.
Yeah. He has been pretty good about not doing that because he realizes. But he said he at work the other day was the first time he wore pants. He had to cave and wear pants instead of shorts.
Get down to 50?
It was in the 40s, I think, overnight. So yeah. So he went. He's still short sleeve. He's not caving. So he's been all right about it. It was, man, what a Universal Technical Institute.
Exactly. Work on your career in the automotive, welding, marine, motorcycle. Just check out one of them things. Get down to there and learn and decide where you want to go. Maybe warm areas.
That's right. Go to Idaho and talk to Bill. Bill, you're on the Under the Hood show. What can we do for you?
Boy, I was complaining about my cold and snow here in North Idaho, but not as bad as you guys, so I guess that's something.
We had a rough one.
Yeah, we're out of the woods right now, so we'll take that. Like I said, when it got back to 0, it felt like a heat wave.
Yeah, that's quite a heat wave.
So what can we do to help you today, Bill?
This morning, I got a question about my wife's Ford Escape, the 2008, with a 4-cylinder automatic. I got about 160,000 miles on it. We lost second gear, and doing some searching on the interwebs, I found that the 2-4 band quite often will break. And if you're careful, you can just replace that band and keep on going. So I did that. I was able to drop everything down low enough to get to the pump out, the side of the transmission, and replace what I found to be a broken 2-4 band. Got it back together, and now I can't get it to start. It's cranked, but I got no fire. Looks like I have fuel, but I don't think I'm getting sparks through coils.
Well, number one, I'm going to give you a big, huge hoodie attaboy for doing what you did, because you've saved yourself enough money and then some by doing that you could probably take this thing to a shop and say, can you get this to start? I don't know what I did. Are you getting
something?
Go ahead.
No, I broke something. I don't know what it is.
Well, just for people listening, there's many times when a transmission breaks that it does just break one thing inside. Now, there's often collateral damage. If you don't catch it right away, you run metal filings through the rest of the unit, you tear it all up. They're always very worried about debris that can get into the torque converter and these different parts. So most of the time, what they're going to do is open that thing all the way up, clean it all the way out, replace anything that shows wear, and rebuild the transmission. If it's a model that they actually work on, there's some that they just replace. And in that particular case, even in an '08 Escape, you're talking about a used transmission that still brings $500 to $1,500 just for a used one. A remanufactured transmission, if available, is going to be in that $3,000 range, probably $2,500. Is that what you found probably when you started looking around?
Yeah. Yep.
And so the fix that you did at home, by doing it yourself, how many dollars did you spend?
$60.
I knew you'd like that answer, Chris.
Yeah, for sure.
Oh, but we still, in all fairness, we still don't know if his transmission works.
Right. Yeah, good point.
He knows he replaced the part, but I think it will. All right. Well,
I think so too.
When you try to start it, and I'm gonna agree, you've went back and checked everything that you took apart, made sure there's no wires pinched, checked all the plugins. You shouldn't have taken that much stuff apart. Really?
Yeah, I really didn't take much.
Are you getting
So,
a security
is there
light or
something
anything
else?
on when you turn the key on?
While it's cranking, the security light goes off. So I was kind of considering that. Because the battery was disconnected for about 3 days altogether. So that year model, I wouldn't think that would cause a problem.
It shouldn't. But we've talked about it on the show before. There are times when you take power away from something, bring power back. Sometimes things can just break. if Russ was here, he'd give you a little more technical answer here on this one because that's what they work on all the time. But it can be that something failed, and I hate to go right to a computer. Have you hooked a scanner to it and see what kind of communication you have?
I have put a scanner on it, and even before I repaired it, it wasn't showing any code, zero code, and the engine light did come on while my wife was driving it, saying, "Hey, the transmission's acting up," but it didn't seem to set a code. So now that it's, in the condition it is, and I'm trying to fire, I would think there would be some sort of code if there's a failure, but
Well, it can be in the in a base system, and you said you felt like are you seeing an RPM signal on your scanner?
I didn't notice that. I do know that the tachometer does come up a little bit while I'm cranking it.
That's encouraging.
Although, after I cranked it, it didn't fire. It automatically continues to turn. You just let the key go, and it
The starter
still
relay
cranks
takes over and tries to do its thing.
for a moment, and then it stops. And then after a minute, the tachometer needle actually dips down and then back up again. Kind of weird.
Well,
That's got to be electronic.
yeah, I don't have an exact answer to give you on what you're going to do next, but since you've had that apart and you had the battery disconnected, and I'm sure you've done this already, but you might try disconnecting it again and just making sure your battery's full, good charge, clean charge on the battery, power things back up again, and just see if you get any different result. Because I'm with you. There shouldn't be anything that I can think of on that year make model that would have, under normal situation, I don't think on the Escape in that era that would have made you be locked out for security reasons typically, or having to relearn a key or that sort of thing. Because we have those vehicles come in here all the time that have been in accidents and the battery gets broke, and we'll put a jump pack on them, and they've been sitting at an auction or in a tow lot for a week or two, and we fire them right back up again. So I mean that
Yeah.
is typically not an issue at all. So I just wonder if something decided it didn't like the power and repower and just like a broke. I mean, computer or something like that, and it's just broke. But you don't want to start buying parts, so you might take some of that money you saved, which was an incredible amount of money,
Yeah.
and find a good diagnostics guy and just bring it to him. But try recycling your power again once and see what happens. I sound like the IT repairman now.
Unplug it and
Yeah.
plug it back in.
Yeah.
Bill, thanks very much for the call. Good luck. And it's his wife's car. So there's just that added pressure, and you want to fix it. You want to.
And you've got, when you talk about like the repair that he did, it's a little misleading just that I played it out that way because I just had a hunch what the answer was going to be. But the individual pieces of an assembly are often inexpensive.
Sure.
But the knowledge and the technique and the tools that you often need to get to it are what you're paying for.
Right.
And in this case, if he did catch that right away, and that's all that was, and that band just snapped, I have transmission shops that we work with, a number of them, and we'll tell them, can you open this up and see what's broke? I don't need it completely rebuilt. I mean, if it's something that can be fixed, and then sometimes they'll find a broken planetary gear, or like I said, a broken band. They say, okay, we're going to replace this band. We want to put new seals in it when we put it back together. It's going to not be rebuilt, but it's going to be used operational, and that's what we need. We just need to get it going again. The person doesn't have $3,000 to spend, but it doesn't go that way often.
And the fact that he got that is encouraging and makes me think that your solution is the only one that's going to work because he's covered everything else.
Sure seems like it.
He's in a spot where he's skilled enough that he's
unless I'm missing something, and there's a dyed-in-the-wool Ford person that does this stuff all day long, and they call up and say, "Hey, do this, do that." I can't. That answer's not in my head right now.
Right. 866-594-4150. We're going to take a break. When we come back, we want to hear from you on the Under the Hood Show.
Find out how you can participate in the show by visiting underthehoodshow.com.
866-594-4150. That's the number to reach us here at the Under the Hood Show. Let's talk to Jeff. Jeff, you're on the Under the Hood Show. What can we do for you?
Yes, I was hoping to hear your educated opinion on potholes.
Don't
I know
hit them.
that they're appearing in our. That's true. I was wondering as well, what kind of damage can they do to your car when you do hit them?
Well, potholes are something that are up in our parts of the world. We see them all too often. I guess you see them all over the place. Eventually, streets become disrepaired, and the moisture works its way underneath or through the cracks and breaks apart the asphalt, and you get these big chuck holes.
And they do. I do think that I'm not revealing any big secret here. In the northern climates, I do think they get deeper and worse.
Oh.
They happen everywhere, but they tend to go in layers in warmer climates. You get rough roads, whereas here you might be on a road one day and the next day you have a pothole that's a foot deep.
Yeah, something got caught by a snow blade, or there is really things that can happen overnight, literally, and all of a sudden you've got this massive crater that you're going to have to not hit. But if you do hit it, you're going to break some stuff. You got to be careful. I do a class just for a couple schools, and we talk to kids about driving and the things of their car to be protective about, protecting their investment, I call it. And one of the things I have a slide on is potholes. And because when you hit a pothole, our little business here that we have, where the Under the Hood Show is based out of, we send parts all across the Midwest and around the area. I think last year we sold just short of 10,000 vehicle rims. And these are not for people to upgrade.
Right.
This is for people to replace rims that have a problem.
Right.
So if you hit a hole hard enough with a steel rim or a cast aluminum rim, you're going to most likely break a belt in the tire if it doesn't take it right off and blow it off the bead. If it does blow it off the bead, you most likely have damaged the tire to the point when you get it aired back up again, if it didn't rupture it, that you're going to have a pretty good vibration or a problem, because the belting is symmetrical inside the tire, just like the rubber. And if that gets broken, all of a sudden it can just start making that tire out of round, and not a good thing. So tires and rims are usually the biggest culprit. And then you get into suspension components. You can jam a strut really hard and ruin a strut, blow the seals right out of a strut, especially when they're cold and they hit hard. They're not meant for that. They're meant for going down the road smooth and absorbing the bumps and the highs and lows in the road and keeping the car comfortable. It's not meant for, this isn't an off-road vehicle. It's not meant and designed to slam into a big rut and keep you going.
Let me step you back just a little bit,
go ahead.
because I think if you hit potholes, you may drive your entire career and hit potholes constantly and never have an issue. So, but you might be driving over the same pothole at work every single day for 6 weeks, and then if it gives way and gets deeper or you hit it harder, then this stuff can happen.
You know when all this is like, that hit different.
Yeah.
And that's when you start bending steering linkage, control arms, knocking the ball joints out, those sort of things. Wheel alignment is affected often, and so then with your alignment being affected, and it could be adjustable yet, but then all of a sudden you're wearing tires off because the alignment got affected. It's just a pretty crazy series of events that can take place just from that one smack into a pothole.
And that's the thing. You can hit most potholes, small potholes, without any issue.
Yeah,
but
the
you should
vehicle's
try
gonna
to
absorb it and be okay.
Try to avoid it, because that one that you didn't know was deeper or worse can really mess you up. It's like you can pull up to the curb and scrape the curb a little bit. You can pull up in front of your house and go, "Ooh, I'm a little close to the curb." You don't want to do that, because if you do it regularly and then you hit it too hard, it's going to do damage. So if you hit one hard and you get that, don't ignore it. Right.
And like I said, you kind of know. And as the vehicle ages and the struts get worn some, and say you're at that 50 to 100,000 mile point, the struts don't have the strength and the ability to recover as quickly because they're getting worn inside, and then that thing can bottom out quicker, and then it can not absorb the impact, and that's when you can damage more so a tire or a rim or a ball joint or just any of those suspension components. A rotating hub can get jammed to the point where all of a sudden it's just jamming those bearings enough where it starts letting moisture in. There's just lots of things that could go bad. So avoid them if you can, and if you have to go through a really rough patch, slow down so that suspension can work through it and not get that hard jamming.
Yeah, that's a good point because I know if you go over things fast, sometimes they feel like they're not doing as much. As opposed to slow, you kind of feel that wobble.
Watch off-road racers and these sort of things. They had, mountain bikers that have the fancy bikes, the motocrossers. They spend thousands and thousands of dollars on tuning the shock absorbers and getting the right coils on and having the right. I mean, this is a science to be able to absorb the types of things that they do to go. But even they have limits.
Right.
I mean, you can spend $7,000 on a shock system for your pickup truck, but if you launch it off of a driveway approach and it goes 5 feet in the air and you land, you're gonna blow out some stuff. It's not meant for that.
Hope that helps you out there, Jeff. And avoid them, but be safe when you do it.
Yeah,
Don't
if you gotta
swerve
cross
into-
them, slow down
Yeah.
and just take your time and let the wheel roll through it and keep your air pressures in a good place. But if you do hit one hard, it's probably a good time for one of those free inspections at a suspension shop when they have it available. You don't see much of that anymore, but letting somebody look at it when you've got it up for oil change, watch your tires, make sure your tread wear is good. If just pay attention to that stuff.
866-594-4150. Let's talk to Butch. You're on the Under the Hood Show. Butch, what can we do for you?
Good morning, guys. I really enjoy your radio program.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You were talking about those kids being stranded in the snow this past weekend, and I always wondered if one would keep something like a Roman candle or something that would give short bursts. You're stranded at night. Granted, it wouldn't work in a blizzard, but stand outside your car, light it, and let it go off. Something that could be seen for a ways, and then would be like a sustained burst. I always thought that might be a good idea to have.
Did you ever do it?
I have not. I haven't been stranded yet.
Do you have a Roman candle in your car now?
Just in case.
Not yet.
maybe
on what you guys
tonight.
think.
I think that's a good excuse. Officer, Minnesota Highway Patrol. No, the trunk is I just came from South Dakota coincidentally. This is for safety.
Yeah, if I get stranded, I'm putting on a show.
Right. Are you safe? No, I can hear people applauding, but no one's coming to get me.
We're having fun with your idea, though. But safety flares are something that have been around for years.
Yeah.
I mean, whether it's Marine or it's people that have expeditions, they got safety flares they can shoot off. So it's a very reasonable idea. If all of a sudden you had a 12-ball Roman candle going off sitting in the middle of the country after the weather, what is that, honey?
Kids messing around.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Remember the story about those
Well,
kids that were stranded? They don't know where they're at? No, it's not a bad idea.
Just a thought. But my main question, I have a 97 Jimmy that I bought from my brother. It has 100,000 miles when I bought it. It doesn't have that many miles. It gets poor gas mileage. I drive it on the interstate, and I keep it at 70, 75 miles an hour. And I'm lucky if I get 17.5 miles per gallon. It's the gear ratio, I don't know what it is, but at 2,000 RPM, it's about 76 miles an hour. And it has I think that you call it the central fuel injection. It's not throttle box.
Yeah, it's got a CPI,
And
central port injection.
Yes, and at 89,000 miles, spark plugs were replaced, the distributor wires and the cap. Sounds like pretty much a complete tune-up. And they flushed the system.
What's the best fuel economy you've
you
ever
can get
gotten
the-
here on this?
17.3, 17.
And it hasn't degraded
4.
over time. It's kind of stayed in that area.
Well, I got it in August, September. I haven't had it out in the road much. In town, I get right around under 12 miles to the gallon.
We're up against a hard break here. Shannon, you're
Yeah, just to summarize it, these vehicles
sounds about right.
They did not get as good a fuel economy as they look like they should.
Yeah.
And so if you go to fueleconomy.gov, I believe you can still get the statistics of what that vehicle is supposed to have gotten. But if you really want to know, somebody needs to put it on a scanner and check the lean rich code. Just watch it on the data to see how that thing's burning and see if it's burning clean or not. And
Sounds about
it's
right,
not far
though.
off, I
Yeah.
don't think. That's the sad part.
Butch, thanks very much for the call. Good luck. Hour 2's coming up of the Under the Hood Show, brought to you by Sturtevant's.
You're listening to the Nordstrom's Under the Hood Show with the Motor Medics, Shannon Nordstrom and Russ the Super Tech Evans. Shannon is an ASE engine and parts specialist, and Russ is an ASE Master certified technician with extensive factory drivability training. Join the Motor Medics for fun and free automotive advice with real-world solutions to everyday automotive problems. The Under the Hood Show is heard weekly on this and other great radio stations across the U.S. Find out how you can participate in the show by visiting underthehoodshow.com.
With Russ Evans, this is Shannon Nordstrom, thanking you for tuning in to the Nordstrom's Under the Hood Show. Have a great day, and remember, PTLA.
The opinions heard on this program, based on the many years of experience of Russ and Shannon, are offered for entertainment value only and as a guide to your repair needs. No claim to repair or cause is given or implied. Always consult with your own certified technician and follow all safety procedures before attempting any repair. To be a part of the show, call 866-594-4150. Under the Hood is produced by Prairie House Productions. All content is the property of Nordstrom's Automotive Incorporated and may not be used without our permission. Copyright Nordstrom's Automotive, Inc. Now, let's go under the hood with the Nordstrom's Motor Medics.
Welcome to the Under the Hood Show. We are glad to have you with us. Russ Evans is not here this week, but Shannon Nordstrom is.
I am. Welcome, Hoodies. Thanks for tuning in so we can help you tune up.
I'm Chris Carter here to answer your calls at 866-594-4150. Russ is on the road traveling for the holidays. We have had now, this is our third show day in a row over the weeks where the weather has been iffy on show day.
Yeah.
Last week, it was bad enough that Russ...
The forecast was bad enough, and
Yeah.
with what Russ had planned for trying to get out of town, we called it early and said, all right, producer Doug, let's make a best of show.
The week before that, we were like, show's over, we got to go.
Yeah, and so the call we made last week was a good one. Yeah,
Very good.
Because, Chris has got to commute back about 45 miles or so. to get-
First I'd do like 60. To get here is an hour now.
yeah.
It's pretty far. So it's iffy. And now this is the third show. Last 2 weeks ago, we were like, oh, we better cut it short and get moving. And
Yeah, we got to keep working on this technology for you.
Yeah.
complete your life a little bit better.
Well, that might be.
Completing
That
is
might
probably not the right word.
Yeah.
Enhance?
866-594-4150. Let's talk to Craig. You're on the End of the Hood Show. Craig, what can we do for you?
Good morning. Hey, love your show, you guys. Got
Thank
a
you,
question.
thanks.
A friend of mine has a 2008 F-250, having fuel gauge problems, both with the fuel gauge and with the fuel economy gauge and stuff. So he took it in. He had the fuel gauge replaced, and it didn't help. I had the fuel pump replaced, and it did not help. So that was earlier. Now, recently, he had actually the fuel pump went bad because it died on the road and the fuel pump went bad. So he took it into the Ford dealer this time, had the fuel pump replaced again, which took care of the starting problem, but it did not take care of the fuel gauge or fuel economy issue. And they were kind of puzzled at what could be next. So my question is it the instrument cluster? Is it a control module? Is there some sort of calibration that should have been done
No.
when that new pump was put in?
No, not at all. Not on that vehicle. Is this a gas motor vehicle or a diesel?
Yep, 5.4
5.4 gas motor
gas.
and a 3/4 ton. You could be either way with a 3/4 ton. And so what the guys at the shop do, and Russ and Jake, I've watched them do this, but when they have people having these problems, okay, first of all, if the pump broke, the pump broke. This, I'm glad you got it fixed because engine doesn't run without the fuel pressure. Sending unit is integrated on that same unit, that same tree that goes into the tank, and you got basically a signal coming out of there saying what the fuel level is. They can hook a scanner up, and they can see as one of their points of data what the reading is coming to the body control module or the engine computer, depending on how the vehicle's wired up and what the network looks like on the vehicle. And they can see the movement of that fuel gauge. They can see what percentage of full it shows or that sort of thing. So if the gauge is if the sending unit is giving the right data back into the system, you should be able to see it on the scanner. If that is wrong and you've just put a sending unit in it, that's where they got to go back and they'll start doing some testing to check wires between that point and the sending unit. Oftentimes you can find a bad ground wire back by a frame when a vehicle gets older. You get in the upper rust belt areas, there's a lot of corrosion, and we've seen harnesses break and just get a lot of problems with it. So inspecting all that wiring would be the next step if they're seeing that they don't have the signal coming from the sending unit. If they inspect all the wiring, they ohm it out, check everything, make sure they got continuity between the right data points. It's going to take somebody that's got knowledge in a wiring diagram to know exactly what to do. Then they have to decide, all right, we may have gotten a bad fuel pump with a bad sending unit. But since the one before that was doing the same thing, I'm not thinking that way at all. I'm thinking that when they hook this up, you're going to find that they are getting a good fuel pump reading, sending unit reading for the fuel level, and that there's a problem with either the way the body control module is processing that signal or with the cluster itself. And so clusters failing is not unusual, but the fact that the cluster and the trip computer weren't working does make me wonder if there's a problem with that circuit past that point. And because both that data would come out of a similar point in the system. They've gotten a little more complicated to fix. It used to be about 3 or 4 wires going back there, and you could check a few things with a meter and be good to go. But with the advent of a CAN bus network, where it's basically a computer network running within the vehicle, it's changed. It's like trying to figure out how to diagnose your HP printer hooked to your PC. There's a lot more of that involved than there used to be.
Okay. So the biggest thing is have them plug a scanner in and check and see where's the gas tank, because I know he filled it up after they put the fuel pump in while the gauge only reads half.
Yeah, they need to see what the actual signal is coming from that sending unit.
Greg, thanks very much for the call. Good luck. 866-594-4150. Let's go to Washington and talk to Troy. Troy, you're on the End of the Hood Show. What can we do for you?
Yeah, good. How you doing? I really appreciate your guys' show.
Thank you.
All the time.
Thank you.
So what I'm working on is a 2012 F-350 Super Duty. with diesel, and it's got a mushy pedal. I've gone through, done a 4-wheel bleed, done a ABS bleed, and then another manual bleed, and it still hasn't firmed up. So I've got the Hydro Boost system on it. I started plugging off lines. I found that when I plugged off between the master cylinder outlet to the, got a line that goes directly to the ABS control unit, it firms up immediately like you would expect. So I'm just trying to make sure I'm not missing something because I don't have a way to plug off all these little ports. Just wondering what your thoughts were on that, if this is something you've seen, like an internal bleeding in that hydraulic unit there or not.
That hydraulic accumulator is not common to fail, but can. Internally, they can lose seals just like anything else, and they can bleed pressure by where they're not supposed to. That is a very distinct possibility. So I just want to back up a little bit, though. So you've clogged off and put a block off in the ports of the master cylinder Hydro Boost. Is that what you've done? And then at that point, you've got a solid pedal.
That's correct, yeah.
And that's something we do often encourage people if they've been chasing one of these things to say, okay, start at the beginning, block it off, and see, just to make sure, because we've seen people like replace hydraulic accumulators and they've replaced all kinds of parts only to find out that they had a bad master cylinder or a brake booster that was bypassing pressure, something like that. So start at the top, which is what you've already done. At that point, you're exactly right. It's very difficult to try to block off all those ports with the lines coming in and out of that hydraulic accumulator for the 4-wheel analog brakes on all 4 wheels. You've got a lot of lines going on there. If you don't see any problems at the wheels and your lines are of good integrity, with a 2012 they should be, you don't have lines that are corroding or with an integrity issue, most likely culprit is that ABS unit. And we do sell a few of those in our place, and in one of our partners like Car-Dash Part, you could look up and find one because they're extremely expensive new. But we do have a lot of people that will buy a used one. I mean, somebody rolls over their truck and thank you, I hope they're okay, and it's got 50,000 miles on it and their brakes were working fine, that part's still fine. And plus it's recycled. You're going to save some natural resources just to buy another one, and the cost is going to be incredibly different. And for many of them, if the problem is hydraulic, they will unbolt the brain off the side of it and put the brain onto the other unit that they buy. And so that way they don't have to do any programming or anything like that, because it's still the same electronics. And it's a matter of just replacing the hydraulic part of it and then rebleeding it and bringing it back. I would say there's a really good chance that is your culprit.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the road I'm going down here. I've looked for it. Can't even tell me one now if it did happen. Not available.
Oh, I know, and some of these units are $2,500 new. They're very complicated little units. Some, you see a lot of them. They're $800 to $1,200 new. And I'm going to guess on that 12 F350, there's been enough of those dismantled around the country, unless there's a run on them because there's a nationwide problem of some sort. You're probably going to find a recycled original equipment unit on Car-Dash Part somewhere near you for $150 to $350.
Well, look at you. You're usually a little cagey on throwing out numbers.
Yeah. Well, I miss every once in a while.
Sure.
But even if he looks it up and it's $600, it's a huge savings compared to can't get one
Right.
or knowing what they cost. And especially when you're, you hate to say this, but when you're doing at-home repairs sometimes, part of your diagnostic is, all right, I've checked everything I can check. I know I can do this.
Yeah.
For the money it's going to cost me, I'm going to do this. This is part of my diagnostistics.
Yeah. Good point.
By replacing the part. That's a choice people make many times.
Troy, thanks very much for the call. 866-594-4150. We're going to take a break. When we come back, we want to hear from you.
Plan her out right now and schedule your next radio appointment with the Motor Medics.
866-594-4150. That's the number to reach us here at the Under the Hood Show. You've had a big week, buddy.
I don't know what you're talking about. It's been Christmas. It was a great week recently,
Come on. Fess up.
Yeah, well, it's a big deal, but I don't get excited internally, but I'm not one that makes a huge deal about stuff.
I'm on it. I'm forcing you. I'm allowing you to.
The Bronco came in.
Yeah. Your Broncos.
Yeah, after a long time.
How is it? How much fun is it? How have you been? How's it going?
I've driven it 2.6 miles.
It's fine, we should say, right off the bat.
It's exciting.
Yeah.
Sioux Falls Ford, Mason, and the new car crew down there, they did a great job. And the way we had it ordered, I was non-negotiable on some of the options that I wanted to get on it. And so I kept getting kicked out of the order window because of certain options that would be not available from the suppliers. And I waited for a hard top, and that was the biggest wait. They had, and I really wanted to wait for them to get a lot of the issues figured out on that hard top. And so we started ordering a 21 model, and we received a 23 model.
Mm-hmm.
And so it just came in, and went right from the dealership to customization.
Okay.
Not going too crazy with it, but it's going to be way different than it was when it was on the show floor. We ordered it in black so that we could wrap it. And at the advice of a guy that I work with on vinyl, he said that using black, he goes, that way your door jambs that you can't get at where the hinges and stuff are at, you don't see another funky color or anything like that. It's just dark in there. And so I thought that was good advice. The interior is a black color anyway, and so a dark color. And so, yeah, I have not seen it yet. And Pride Vinyl, their vinyl division, Jonathan is really excited about wrapping this. He's I call him the Wrap Master. He's here in Sioux Falls, and I'm really excited to see his work. And we saw the roll of film that we're going to use to wrap it with, and it had been ordered 8 months ago. We'd never went down and looked at it. My wife Tammy and I hadn't. And so when we got in there together, she was following me. We walked in, and I said, "Hey, where's the roll of wrap? I want to see it." We saw it in person. We're like, "Oh." We were calling in and anybody in the shop to ask for opinions. Should we do this?
I just picture you. Hey, go look. You have that guy and whoever's working going. It works
Well,
fine."
and you had to wait to get it. You know,
Right.
these certain colors that you're waiting. There's like a lot of things in the supply chain right now. There's certain pigmentations and colors that are just hard to get.
Sure.
And so they told me, well, we could change it, but you're going to probably wait a few months to get a full roll of what you want. And they said, how about if we do one side? And then we'll have you come look at it. So then my wife and I got on the internet, and we found the exact part number name of the wrap, and we started looking at vehicles that have been wrapped in that color. And we were like, yeah, you know what? It's a little more bold than we planned, but maybe it's going to work. So the next morning I called them up. I said, wrap it, take some pictures.
Yep.
I don't want to see it till it's done. And so we're in that point right now.
Okay.
And then next up is I've been working with the guys over at Symes Tire in Sioux Falls here. They've helped me with another vehicle, and they ordered me up some method rims that we're going to have that are kind of unique, and we're going to put little bigger tires on it and an Eibach suspension lift. They've got a spring kit that they're doing for the Badlands edition Broncos, the Sasquatch edition, Badlands edition. We'll get it up in the air just a little bit, nothing too big, but just to make it look a little different. So I'm very eager, and it probably won't get public viewing for another week or so here yet.
Okay.
But, yeah, excited, yes. I wish it would have came in the summertime. Had some top-off action, but
Right.
didn't happen.
It's all right.
I'll be okay. And that's why I said this is a true first-world problem. I'll be okay. This is a fun thing my wife and I have been saving up for, and we got to save more money.
Right? Yeah.
That was a good thing.
Uh-huh.
The fund that we were waiting to pay on, we saved some more money.
So you drove it for what, 10 minutes?
Yep, not even that. I
Okay.
took it out of Sioux Falls Ford's showroom. They opened the door, and we drove it from 26th Street to 12th Street and into the shop over. They had the door open as I was coming because snow was coming again, and we kept it pretty clean, so they didn't have to have a big goopy mess to work with.
Right.
And took it they rolled up the door and we drove it right in and we left it there.
So how was it in that drive?
Well, it was fine. This is weird to say, but it's exciting but it's underwhelming compared to how exciting it would have been
Right.
if we would have gotten it
Had it.
right away when
Yeah.
these were first a big deal.
Yeah.
It's still a big deal. I don't want to say this wrong. It's a huge deal. It's very exciting for us. But it wasn't as exciting as it would have been if we would have got it 2 years ago.
Well, a good example is when you said you ordered one.
Yep.
On this show, we went, oh,
Yeah.
oh. Whereas now, when you say we got a Bronco, we say, oh, cool.
Yeah. And there's a lot of them running around, and so it's getting to be like the Jeep Wranglers, which we had one of those too. Just a fun, do a little bit of everything vehicle, but now we want to make it our own because there's enough of them around. We're just going to personalize it and make it our own. I know my neighbor, he likes Jeeps, and Ross at one time he said to me, he goes, I'd like to get a Jeep again. I had one once. He goes, they're kind of like a Swiss Army knife, It's just, but everybody likes to just put their own touch on it, and so yeah, it's going to be exciting. And then we also got that opportunity. Ford Motor Company launching new products in the middle of a pandemic, or any of these companies. GM's got the same issues with like their Corvette Z06 and the C8 launch. You can name your brand. They're having troubles with their launches of new products. They got all this stuff pent up, and engineering is saying, hey, look what we can do. And so they're putting this stuff out there. Oh, you can't get it. You got to wait. So that's been a challenge. But Ford was very good. They sent us a lot of free gifts. We got a free gift like quite a bit. We got a lot of keychains and hammocks.
That's
and
funny.
And I mean, this stuff will probably maybe be collector's items when I'm 90. So we got all this extra stuff that came in the mail. And then they helped us out on going to that off-rodeo that I went to, where they took us off-road and showed us the capabilities. And we spent a couple days with Ford people, and that was cool. That was made available to people that were interested. And I would encourage that for any other Bronco owners out there listening. If you're not an off-roader yourself, I would encourage you to take them up on their Bronco off-rodeo offer.
You learned a lot. I mean,
yeah, it was great. It was
yeah.
great. I mean, this vehicle will more than likely be to take the joke, a mall crawler way more than it'll ever be a rock crawler.
Right.
But we will take it off-road after doing the off-rodeo and doing a little bit more of that. And I used to race Baja off-road with an ATV. So, I mean, I get that stuff, but I've just never, I don't know. I got to take more time to do some things.
We got to take it up to that OHV.
Yeah.
And take it out.
Yeah.
Got right in there. And if you can't go.
I can't go?
It's fine. No, if you can't, and we'd planned it, I'm just saying. 866-594-4150. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we want to talk to you on the Under the Hood Show. Kurt, you're up next.
Car feeling ill? Don't want to spread it to your wallet? Call the Motor Medics now for free advice.
866-594-4150. If you follow us on Facebook, you join the hoodie fan club at underthehoodshow.com. You could win a hoodie thanks to our partners at Universal Technical Institute.
That is where you need to look up to get a career in some really cool things. Automotive, marine, welding. They've got some wonderful programs. They're aligned with the manufacturers in a lot of areas to be able to give the best training. Training today's technicians for tomorrow's cars should almost be their slogan.
Yeah, good point.
Because they are getting people ready for what's next. And there are going to be careers that continue to evolve in the automotive sector when you start looking at the electric vehicles, hydrogen, and things that are coming. We need those people that can think different.
Mm-hmm.
And so UTI, they got campuses in great locations. They got an alignment with NASCAR. They're great people too, and we've had a lot of fun getting to meet some of the folks from UTI.
UTI.edu. Now let's go talk to Kurt. You're on the Under the Hood show. Kurt, what can we do for you?
Yeah, I got an 87 Bronco full size. Heard you talking Bronco earlier. I guess Russ isn't in today, but I'll ask the question anyways. I've got my rear window.
That's a disclaimer. There's a good chance that it's not going to get answered right.
That is a fair. This is a good attitude
I
to
love
have.
it. He is a regular listener. I know that.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, see, I think you usually start with Russ when it comes to advice, so we've kind of grown used to that.
Oh, that's good.
But good for him. He's got some time off for the holidays.
Yeah, he needs that.
Question. Yeah, that's good. My rear window, it's an electric window on the rear of that rear deck, and it is stuck about 4 inches open, of all places. I wish it was stuck shut, but 4 inches open, which is a pain in the drain. Was wondering, the switch in the front on the dash, that doesn't work, of course, and then the key, which you can insert and turn in the back, does not work either. Is that something, I wouldn't know where to start. I suppose you just about have to bring it to the shop in Garrettson, and
they have they have a big window regulator in there, just like a side door window, and they're under spring tension also, so they're dangerous if you're not prepared on how you take it apart. If you have to disassemble it, but it is not uncommon for the motors to fail. It was a similar. If I remember right, that is the same interchange number of power window motor that is used in the front doors of like 2000 or maybe I got to go older. A 1980 or 79 Thunderbird.
Okay.
I had to get my mind going to the right place.
Yep.
It's a big old heavy duty power window motor, and so you could take the rear access panel off of that and run 12 volts right to the motor and just reverse polarity to change your directions and see if that motor is any good. Start your way without taking anything apart, unbolting the regulator or any. Don't do that until you understand exactly how that comes apart. Because like I said, it can really pinch fingers and break things and sever fingers potentially. So I'm serious. I mean, they're dangerous if you don't know what you're taking apart. And you could run 12 volts right to that motor and see if it moves or not. And you might also find that the window regulator's got some teeth off it, but you'd probably hear that clicking. That'd be a pretty odd. That's a big hollow cavity. You'll usually hear that making noise in there if the regulator's stripped out and clicking, or if the gear is bad on the end of the motor. It'll try to move until it wears it out enough, but you still hear something. And so,
is there parts availability for that process?
Yes, there is. What you're seeing, and it's interesting that you brought this up. When we got our Bronco, not to talk about that anymore, but we just start looking online at different things people are doing to customize these, and I found it interesting that there were people. The majority are customizing them to look like the retro, 67, 70, Bronco.
White wheels.
Yeah, there's a ton of that. But I saw a great number of people that were customizing them to look like a Bronco 2 from 1984 to 19, and that surprised me because I never thought that was a thing. But there was people that had those that was their vision of a Bronco. There's people that are putting the scripts on the side to look like this Bronco, 87 to 90. What is it, 6?
Sir, how would you like your Bronco wrapped? I want it to be gold but faded. I want it to be like it's real bad paint. Okay.
But it was just, you start looking around, and on Etsy, there's people 3D printing, making different badges for the sides to match what era you want to put on there.
Can you wrap it so it looks like the wheel wells are all super rusty?
Yeah, we can do that. I've seen people do that, actually. That's funny. But there's enough interest in these 87 and even going back to 80 before they freshen the front end and the back end a little bit. There's enough interest and value growing in those that the aftermarket continues to produce things. The electric, like I said, that electric motor for the back, common part that was used in a lot of Fords, so they're available in different catalogs. You can even find some used ones on Car Dash Part. Find somebody in a southern climate that doesn't have the rust problems. Is your metal shell still intact, or is it rusted out real bad on the bottom of the gate on the back?
Oh, I think Kurt's gone. Oh, dropped off.
Okay, but usually they're rusted out so bad, and then they just, because the moisture comes in, it can't get out. The drains get dirty, and you can't get the stuff out of there. Is what usually happens. But I think he's going to find it's not a bad fix.
When he said that the key in the back doesn't work, I think I knew that before he told us.
It never worked.
Right. 89, that thing was probably.
Yeah, exactly.
But that is, it did kind of shock me when he said that. I almost had oh, that's right. You could put the key in, and if you could either unlock it or run the window. I don't know I can think of 3 people that had it, and none of them worked. But in theory, it was supposed to.
Yeah, and you'd see a similar thing on the back of like a Grand Wagoneer.
Yeah.
Some of the station wagons.
Ours,
they
we had
that
one.
stuff. Did yours work?
No, it did for a while. In my memory, we did something that made that not work. Now, I don't know if that's a true memory or we just got blamed for it, which is totally also possible. 4 boys, we did
broke a lot of stuff.
Yeah, for sure. But yeah, I remember it worked for a while, and then it didn't work anymore. And we just think about whatever. I was thinking the back window and riding in the back of the car with the window down in the back
Sucking
of the
in
station.
the exhaust fumes. Being ready for brace yourself in event of a rear end collision.
Looking back. Oh, that one was close.
That came fast.
Waving. I can remember waving at someone and yelling because they were coming too fast at the stoplight, and they caught it. They stopped before they hit us.
They're like, I don't want to hit a child.
But it was, think about that now, and it would change your entire life. Now it was just like, oh, good, we didn't, we escaped that one. Okay, next.
Yeah.
Yeah, crazy. The key in the back, I haven't thought about that in a while. 866-594-4150. What else has caught your attention in the automotive world?
Well, there is so much going on, and you could pick something every day that's sometimes in the news cycle. I've had this one article here in front of me that I was going to talk about because it kind of intrigued me. My sister and I were texting this morning, and she recently got a real in-depth tour of our facility, and she goes, I don't think people realize how green you are. You know, how you should be pushing the recycling thing harder about what you do. And, she's in the plant world, the nursery world, and so she's really into the outdoors and that she really gets involved in what the earth can create and protecting what's there.
What an interesting pair.
Yeah.
In your family. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And so when I was looking at that, I'm thinking, okay, environmental impact is something a lot of people pay attention to, but the manufacturers, and if this article is interesting to me, they're going to an eco-friendly paints and to another level. And this is from Automotive News, and I've had this since July. But BMW and the global coating supplier BASF are partnering to create vehicle paints out of bio-waste from sewage treatment plants.
They don't make the things we buy. They make the things we buy better.
So in this case, we take your waste.
Right?
We take your bio-waste, and we make it into paint. So they are putting a little bit of lipstick on the bulldog here. But so the organic material replaces traditional petroleum-based building blocks such as naphtha. The solution will be used at BMW's factory in Leipzig, Germany, and Roslyn, South Africa. The companies claim the resulting corrosion protection and matte paint process lowers CO2 emissions by 40%. BMW also points out that the process reduces the total consumption of fossil resources and avoids emissions associated with production, transport, and processing of crude oil. As we strive to secure the most sustainable supply chain in the automotive industry, we are working with all our suppliers to pinpoint potential CO2 savings. And that was Dick Bubenheim. And I think it might be Bubenheim, but, it sounds better to say that. It's kind of fun. Just roll with it, right? Head of Plastics, Chemical Products, and Process Materials at BMW. He said the paints made using biomass are chemically identical, which means they can be used in production at short notice, reducing carbon emissions in the supply chain right away.
That's interesting.
Yeah. You wouldn't think of bio waste right away as being something you'd put into paint.
No. Quite the opposite.
Yeah, I mean that's because these paint jobs on these cars anymore when they come out of the factory are just absolutely amazing. And
We talked about it a little earlier, that faded paint. The paint, we've talked about it on the show too. It's really so different.
well, the technology's gotten so good. My mom and dad just got back from touring the Corvette plant in Bowling Green. They went out there and they've done it before, but they haven't seen the C8 production out there yet. And so they had some other stuff to do, and they went out that way and got a tour. And they used to run cars down assembly lines, and they would do, all right, we're doing green cars. No, we're doing blue cars.
Mm-hmm.
But anymore, the technology is such that the computer comes through, and it's going to be a fire mist red, and it blasts out fire mist red and self-purges itself for the next one, and next one comes in, and it's finish line yellow or whatever it might happen to be, and they're just coming down the line like a gumball machine, all different colors. And that's pretty amazing to me.
Yeah, for sure. Especially when if you look at the paint process, those are all robotic now, aren't they?
Yeah, 100%. Yep.
Where it just paints the whole thing.
It's just happening.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the panels some panels are painted separately, and then they get married back up with the car down the assembly line further. Whatever wheel and tire option the vehicle's supposed to have, that whole computer system's keeping track of that to know that this is this VIN number and it's coming here now. Wheels and tires, this is the set we put here now.
Mm-hmm.
This is what needs to go on that car. And just an amazing process, and they were just thrilled to get to see all that in the works.
That is super interesting to see, and still how much hands-on there is and how much hands-off there is. On the same, I've seen just recently, I watched a video about a car being put together, and it was like, look at all those people that are, look how much that part isn't involving people.
Yep.
I mean,
This whole dashboard comes down and gets set in there, and
yeah.
Back not even 15 years ago, that was probably all assembled. People laying underneath dashes and doing all this. Now somebody just comes along and say, okay, it's in there now. Click, plug in the harness, do all that stuff. It's pretty fun, pretty crazy.
866-594-4150. We're going to take a break. When we come back, we want to hear from you on the Under the Hood Show.
Get your planner out right now and schedule your next radio appointment with the Motor Medics.
866-594-4150. That's the number to reach us here at the Under the Hood Show. I had a conversation with someone last week at work, and they said, I got a question for the Under the Hood Show. My car, it starts fine normally, but it did not want to start today. And I said,
Is that when it was 15 below?
Yeah. I said, it's a miracle that any cars started this week. We had weather that, of course, was rough. Although it was funny because I had one car that I could touch the key and it would just fire right up. And then our other car, both with reasonably new batteries last year, I think, that one just did not want to fire. I had to make it start. The Element just had it just was colder than the Toyota. It just did not.
Yeah, there's
was
a
not
lot of
enjoying it.
There's a lot of people that just have discovered their weak batteries that were heated up and killed in the summertime. And then when the wintertime comes and you need that highest cold cranking amps to really get things moving because it's tight, it's cold, everything's like, I don't want to do this. And that's when they realize that battery just doesn't cut the mustard.
Cold cranking really, that came into sharp focus this last week.
Yeah, I know my daughter and her boyfriend, they took off yesterday to drive back to Phoenix because he didn't have his car there originally, and so he's driving his car back down, and he took it down to the dealership and had it go through a full kind of a look over just before they drove that big journey. And they said that, well, hey, he called me and he said, they're telling me my battery is bad. He goes, the car starts, works and everything. I said, what are they telling you? And so they said that the internal capacitance is too high and his cold cranking amps were down to like 270 on their meter. And so that's not good. I mean, this is a battery that should have been 650 cold cranking amps. And so they got him an AGM battery. I'm pretty sure that our friends from Clarios had a hand in the battery that he put in there. And so that AGM battery, once they got it put in, and just, he said, wow, actually starts a little bit. It had started getting weak, and he didn't even realize it had kind of lulled itself down. And so those tests that you do now with the computers, how they can hook up an electronic tester to the battery, they can tell you a lot before your battery fails.
Right. Yeah, they can really see inside it.
And so, you think, oh, it's working. Why would I want to do that? But if that battery's down to only a third of its original capacity, that's a problem. You're going to find yourself in a bad spot, because today's cars, and we'll talk the last 15 years, even 20 years, they are so heavily reliant on stable power for the computer networks to work, everything that's connected to the computer networks to work. So if you start having, because your battery is as much of a filter for the power system as it is a source to start the car. It is the filter to maintain stable power. You've got your alternator with a voltage regulator that's creating and regenerating current and these sort of things, but the battery is kind of your central filter of the power, and it's got to be stable, and it's got to be strong. And so I really encourage people, if they did make it through this last stretch and you're going in for some maintenance, make sure your shop's got the capability to do the electronic testing on the battery, and look for the internal capacitance, and just have them give you a state of health on that battery. Very important.
You can go to the battery shop on YouTube
Yeah.
and check it out and find out more about your battery.
Yep, our friends at Clarios bring that to you.
I did have multiple occasions where we have one vehicle that you hit the key and then it starts itself. Once you crank the key, you let off and it goes. And switching back and forth, I had a little bit of a learning curve each time.
Between the two different vehicles,
Yeah,
what
just,
to do.
I would go start one and I'd go, oh, that's right, I don't have to hold it. And then the other one, I'd go like, oh, it won't start. Oh, I have to.
Holding it doesn't hurt anything.
Right.
At that
Right.
point. It would just. But if it doesn't start, then you're kind of scared, because, what is this thing going to do? And it'll time out. Usually, if everything's working right, it's going to say, nope, not starting, not doing this. I've cranked long enough. I'm going to protect myself.
How many times in the past 20 years have you not had a car start in the cold versus 20 years previous? I mean, I can remember when I was a
you're
kid.
jump starting cars all the time.
All the time.
Every lead story in the news used to be the shops full of cars getting towed that didn't start.
And running the power cord out the window, out to the heater, the block heater. And
the biggest advents have been the gas direct injection that's being used on a lot of this stuff. The diesels with the direct injection. They're taking high pressure injection right into the cylinders. You got these diesels that if you really watch your fuel correctly as you get into the colder months, and make sure you're getting a good blend or the number one fuel that you need and putting the additives in there, they'll start on 10 below to 0. And they would have never started before. I remember, on the farm, we pulled tractors all the time to start them and trying to get things to go in the cold. It was just horrendous. But the technology has improved so much that there's a lot of manufacturers don't even offer a block heater anymore.
Right.
It's not even an option on the list because they just don't need it as a rule. So it's changed a bunch that way.
Diesel has completely changed.
When you mention diesel, it makes me think of something else that was in the news this week. The Clean Truck Act was passed.
Huh.
And I have not had a chance to dig into it yet, but the current administration is definitely more environmentally conscious than the previous administration. And so they're rolling back a lot of the things that had been probably loosened up a bit previous. And they've been cracking down on the tuner companies. There's been more and more of that with some huge penalties against tuner companies. And this Clean Truck Act looks to me like it takes another swing at tightening up the emissions on diesel vehicles. At the same time, sets standards and baselines for the electrification of the truck fleet, the medium duty and the heavy duty truck fleet. And so I'm going to dig into that a little bit more and see what they've done. But I'm going to guess that there is a lot of people out there that are just squirming when they hear that they're going to tighten up the emissions even more on these diesel vehicles, because they've got them in a box pretty tight already as far as what they can do and what technologies they have in order to make the emissions fall into the levels that they need to fall into. And so this Clean Truck Act that was passed has the potential to put another level in that. And I know one of my friends was just recently looking to buy some new vehicles for his business, and it was going to still take a long time to get the vehicles that he wanted. And they said, well, we've got these electric versions available, and so we can have those for you in February. This is a recent conversation. And he says, okay, well, tell me about them. And they said, well, it's got a range of 110 miles, and he says to him, he goes, I'm not delivering pizzas. Because that's not going to work.
Yeah.
So there's a long ways to go yet, but I know
Right.
Pepsi has recently taken delivery of, I believe, the first Tesla semis.
Okay.
They've taken, I believe that did happen. I know they were staging up for it to happen, that they were going to take delivery of their first one. And that, I believe, they had the range forecast at 500 to 600 miles.
Okay.
But I don't know what happened after that.
Right. Yeah.
You know, what's the modern day truck stop look like with electric semis?
Interesting. And that is when we talk about all
more-
this.
another step yet. What is the what does it look like when they're all what's the word, boondocking together, where they're going down the road all hooked in a chain, basically, with autonomous?
Right.
You don't need as many snacks at the truck stop.
That is and that is all things that will shake out. I know we talk about this all the time, but if you think about what truck stops looked like 50 years ago, or even the check your oil, wash your windshield.
Yeah.
I mean, it's constantly changing,
Yeah, it is.
and it's
But
just constantly
We're
changing.
going to be along for the ride to watch
Yeah.
to see what happens.
It is an interesting time to be around for
Yeah,
sure.
It is. It definitely is. We have
Which
we've seen a lot.
I guess
we're
it
going to see
always-
so much more.
It always has been.
Yeah.
I mean, I think of my grandpa who was a service manager and a lead tech at the Ford dealership and in the 30s, and he ended up teaching at a college and teaching computer diagnostics at a college before he retired at age 85 or whatever it was. So that stuff's always
Well, and you've said it often, Chris, and I think you say it well, that they're going to set these grandiose targets of what needs to happen, knowing they probably won't get there.
right.
But they're going to get a lot closer,
Yeah,
and they're going to get a lot further.
exactly.
And I'm not one that's totally in agreement with everything that's happening, but yet I'm intrigued with the technology and what can be done. We're studying for our school right now. Our school was one of the ones that I'm the school board president for that got some of the clean bus grants for electric buses, and so we're looking into that and trying to learn how that works in our world
Right.
in the Midwest with the weather that we have and everything else. That it's doable. It's getting there.
That'll do it for this hour of the Under the Hood Show. For Russ Evans, who's not here, and Shannon Nordstrom, I'm Chris Carter. Thanks for joining us. All right, there you go. That is the show. Russ, we had a couple comments online. Russ is just traveling for the holidays.
Yeah, he's
Seen family. Been all
enjoying some
around.
stuff.
He is a speech to texter. He does a lot of texting via talking to his phone, where he'll just
He
say,
does.
"Yeah."
And so you get some things sometimes that aren't quite
I
what
got
he
a,
expected them to be.
I got a text from him the other day that said, "Things are going great. We left last night. Oh my gosh, that car is gonna crash. It just did. We just saw an accident. Grab your phone."
Seriously?
Yeah. It was all on there, and then he texted me again and said, "Oh, it was fine. They did. It's the fourth one we've seen, minor, and it was fine." But it was just funny because I think at some point he just sent it audioly as well, and so I got the whole text, and it made sense. And then all of a sudden, I was like reading a live text of what was going on. I got it on the dash cam. Was on there.
Oh, gosh.
It was really funny. So
Oh,
and everything was fine.
we our family sells some stuff on eBay. The kids do it on the side, and I
Sounded funny.
get bored. But I was going through and auditing some of their work the other night, just looking through what they had did on the listings, and I ran across one. It was an owner's manual, and it was 2008 Silverado Denali, or 2008 GMC Sierra Denali. Oh my gosh, did you? Was the title.
That's awesome.
So they must have been using voice to text.
Right.
And just rolling through it. And so quality control's got some work to do in their department. So
I love that you said that like some people say we camp.
yeah.
You were like, oh, my family, we sell things on eBay. We go camping in
We
the
just
summer.
can't stop.
Yeah,
I mean, you see things, you're like that. My dad's the worst, and I give my dad a hard time. And one of our former employees, Jr., said to me one time, he goes, "You're no different than your dad." He goes, "His treasure chest, all the stuff he sells that you pull it." He goes, "Yours is just electronic."
Right?
You're no different. That was hard to hear that, but it was kind of the truth. Talk about former employees in all seriousness. For our business here, Nordstrom's Automotive Inc., we've got a lot of families involved in what we do. And I always tell my staff we get a little serious here. I tell my staff at meetings, we have monthly meetings with everybody. We get together, we have a live meeting in person. And I always tell them, I said, hey, remember, right now, in this room, there's 80 of us here, 75, whoever's there that week, that month. Everybody in here is close to somebody that's celebrating something and is close to somebody that's dealing with something and close to somebody that's losing someone. And you need to realize that as we go through our month, that we need to celebrate with people that are celebrating and be able to be compassionate and show some grace to people that are going through stuff. The people that are going through stuff, you got to figure out how to manage that so that it still integrates with the day, that we can't just take over with your situation, but we want to help you. And that's just, we've been wired that way for a long time, and it comes from my parents, and I'm proud to carry on that way of doing business and trying to promote that sort of an environment. But, you talk about loss. We just lost a good friend, and he was somebody that was a manager for me, one of my first managers we had that was truly titled that, and was not a Nordstrom. And he passed away unexpectedly, and it was Brad Gullickson was his name. And I know that he's got a lot of friends in this area. He was a USD alum. He worked with a company. Him and his best friend that still works for us. One of his best friends. He's got a lot of best friends. Jay Kruger. They did Midwest Mobile Wash, and they went around and they washed UPS trucks and did a bunch of that kind of stuff. And then they were doing repairable cars, and so that's how I got to know him. And Brad eventually, we got to know him well enough that we hired him. And he became part of our team, and just a super creative, witty, quick-thinking guy, and could really help bring things together with people. And I always appreciate him. Him and I he made me laugh all the time. Just such a clever mind. And he just passed away unexpectedly of a heart attack, and 67 years old, way too young. And we know what happens. It happens to a lot of people that are listening right now and watching right now, and it happens so suddenly that there's just nothing that they could do. And that wasn't in his plans. He's been in commercial real estate in Sioux Falls for the last 15 years, I think, and he got to know a lot of people that way. But Brad, when I think back, and I put a little tribute on our Facebook page, was the one that penned the name for our self-service yard. You Pull It. We were having a naming contest amongst employees, and he kind of threw it out, I think as a joke, because he was always throwing one-liners out and different things. And he goes, yeah, you guys, and I can't remember if he submitted it. I know we had a cake. I just don't remember the cake was after or before. Some people remember this stuff to a T, and there's so much going on. I just remember the details. But Brad was the one that threw out the name of You Pull It using EWEPULLET, the farm animals, since we're on the farm.
Mm-hmm.
And so that will be a memory I'll have for a long time. And he challenged me when we were going to be building another warehouse building, and said, he goes, you really need to build a building to inventory the cars in, check the cars in all year round, have it climate controlled, where forklifts can bring them in when they're wrecked, and the guys can get a good look at them and do a better job of quality control. And so what became eventually what we call our Zwak Plaza, which was another CFO of ours, a manager of ours. These are all local people we know. He was the one that kind of ran that project after we decided to build it. And it was the first project that probably Art and Shannon Nordstrom didn't have their hand on every piece of it. And so that got a sign hung up on it, the Zwak Plaza. But I reminded my mom and dad and some of the managers that Brad was the one that had challenged me to say, you know what, you should really build this building. And it was a game changer for us in the industry on having that sort of a facility. And that was in 1993, I think, or 94 that we moved into that. And so I owe Brad a lot of gratitude for what he helped out in part of the evolution of our business. And so I'm gonna miss him. He was still come out as a customer. Just saw him a couple weeks ago. The most recent thing that he got me on that he had just made me smile, and then I'll move on, is I took my son and his girlfriend, who had never officially rode a snowmobile before, one of the first, that 10 inches of snow we got, and we took off and we rode snowmobiles. I said, I want to go to Trent and get a burger. Little bar up there's got good burgers. I said, and there's a trail system that goes, and you can get there. You got to cross off of the road a couple times and go over some bridges, and it was not a good day to be riding trail sleds in these ditches because the groomer hadn't been out. It was soft snow. You're still got weeds poking through, and it just wasn't prepared to ride. But I went anyway. And Riley's girlfriend, bless her heart, she hung in there. I think she tipped over once trying to get out of a steep ditch and went too slow and rolled backwards. And glad she's nimble. But my son's like, she'll never do this again. You got to quit. And so we got all the way there. And so I posted on Instagram and Facebook that, hey, we made it to Steve's in Chester, and tear off her rookie stripe because Tegan had made it, and goes back to Claire B. Lang on the NASCAR radio, tear off the rookie stripe when they'd call in. And Freudianly, I typed in Steve's in Chester because we do a lot of business with Steve's Tire Service in Chester. They've gotten to be good friends of ours, and they haul vehicles for us with their transport division. And so I just typed that, Steve's in Chester. I even pinned the location of Steve's Bar in Trent. And so it was on Twitter, and Brad happened to see it, and he just sends a comment, just as he would. That looks suspiciously like Steve's in Trent. And I just smiled because I'm like, I knew exactly where I was.
Right.
And I just totally, and so I changed the post and gave Brad a nod back, but that was just kind of, that's the way he would do things. I'm going to miss him, but I know the family's going to miss him a lot more because he was pretty key in their family. So
That'll do it for the Under the Hood Show. Thanks for joining us.